do think 8 wins being used as a pawn. Caitlyn didn't bring racism. That of you make this has been happening, and that I think is what's been such a shock for all of us. Then other people are surprised by the Subaru bird just crushed races and the WNBA, and it was long overdue. Really, gold medalists, MVPs, and legends all shy away from these problems, but at last someone has the courage to speak up about them. Soon not only voice your support for the but also entered the room branching flamethrowers. Thus there is one thing I would like to reset before moving further, and it's the words that are spoken in front of supporters, new fans, Caitlyn fans, and Fever fans that really has to be removed. Burning bridges, taking names, and carrying it all off with flair. Do you know what the finest part is? She didn't bat an eyelash, even though she knew it may ruin her career. Subaru tore into the system in a podcast with Megan Rip, you know that was off limits. She questioned why Caitlin Clark is the object of so much racial animosity, why her incredible accomplishments and record-breaking sales are going unnoticed, and even alluded to a big plot against her. So watch through to the very end before this video is removed. Where you were, yes, did you go over and give Caitlin a little swatting motion? Did you plan to give her a hard look? If that's the case, could you briefly discuss what transpired during that play, or not at all? I simply have no idea why I would want to strike someone in the eye. I can't even begin to understand that. No, I didn't know. I had no idea that I truly had her. After a game, Christine, a journalist, questioned to join a Carrington about this eye-poking scenario, which is how it all began. You would assume that was just any old inquiry, wouldn't you? Intense moments like this are commonplace for athletes to be questioned. No, not this time, though. This entire situation took a drastic turn, with Christine's query being accused of racism. Or Pino said the question itself may seem innocent, but the way it's being asked isn't. Yes, there are racial overtones to it. Abruptly, the discourse revealed an entirely new level. Naturally, when I first heard that, my gut told me that wasn't good. That's not how I feel, to be honest. That seems really racist. She was not going to let this one pass without confronting the media, particularly ESPN, for making the see like a farce. She added in typical super fashion that the question wasn't actually racist, but rather that the way the media spinning it makes it seem that way. Yes, that is undoubtedly troublesome. Sue brought up the issue that athletes of color are scrutinized for more than their white counterparts. However, when a black athlete is involved, the situation becomes more significant, contentious, or worse, racially charged. But yes, I do not agree with you. Wasn't the greatest question in my opinion, given what was going on at the time. I thought the incur where it was appropriate. Pseudo was only warming up, saying that this is a little portion of a much larger picture. She made the connection. Now it's likely that Christine had no intention of this all blowing up the way it WNBA, however, made the decision that it is. She blasted the league, the media, the bands, and the entire system for allowing these rumors to spread widely. If it had been a white player, Suit claims not nearly as much attention would have been paid to this all dish any situation. If it had been a white after the character's position, but since it would degenerate, we get a full-fledged narrative with all the racial overtones you can imagine. Following Diana's words, global success, Twitter trolls reborn, see, with automation taking over, and that's when the story of jealous small-time athletes detested Caitlyn began. That's per se. I say what took place. That's where it began, that we must just despise her, that we see her with a narrow gaze, that we want her to fail in the WNBA, that we're just hateful of her, you know, thus we are envious and petty. She then described how Diana Taurasi, one of the players, made a comment that led to the beginning of the story. Yes, the WNBA world was essentially lit on fire when the icon herself made a casual remark that was so late that it caused full-blown turmoil. It was only natural for Sue Bird, our resident voice of reason, to intervene and deconstruct everything said. Such comments had such a profoundly negative ripple effect, and it hit harder than everyone had anticipated. Just Sue also means that when she admits that things turned ugly, it was no longer merely the banter, competitiveness, and jealousy. There was an increase use in hate speech and racial charges. Suddenly basketball had no place in the Yarlas. It seems that racial tensions and other issues that surface one supporters become agitated over matters beyond the game itself for now being discussed. They appeared to have forgotten the reason for their initial appearance. I never felt that Caitlyn was the goal. And I will end there, because what actually transpired was the formation of these small-minded and as minutes after the season began and observers noticed that Caitlyn was being blocked from shots or picked up for court, the perception shifted to, oh, they're targeting her. Yes, they are attempting to harp her. When Super described how Caitlyn had to deal with much more than the typical elbows and trash talk, she didn't hold back. Oh no, Caitlyn was avoiding actual punches, not just symbolic ones. It seemed like she had to prepare herself for more than just the opposition team's plan. Each time she took the court, it wasn't about fair play. Players were literally taking shots at her. Sue explained everything very well, that this was no mere defensive measure. Caitlyn was dealing with far more than the normal rough and tumble of a women's basketball game. It was unsightly, impersonal. So Dew, of course, did not downplay the racial aspect of the situation. She was direct in her statement. Caitlyn's situation went beyond her skill level as a basketball player. It dealt with privilege, race, and as some players are color perceived her ascent as a mirror of something far greater. Why was everyone focusing on Caitlyn? What was the reason for her elevation while other players were not? Sue did not mince words. This was no longer a sports-related problem. It was about those grievances in the larger context of race. Recently, the Caitlyn was caught in the crossfire as they were now transpiring on the court in real time. Thus, I believe that it really comes down to her fans, what fans in particular, as was the Indiana people that right for her, and I treat that with deference, but occasionally it's quite offensive. In my opinion, there is a great deal of racism involved. Furthermore, I don't think she stands by any of that. She didn't hold either. She's been sitting on this tee for far too long while chatting about Angel Reese and Alyssa Thomas-Reese, who has been loud and proud since your time at LSU, and Thomas, who has been a pillar for the Connecticut Sun, are two people you are familiar with. They're not precisely bashful. They have also been criticizing Caitlin Clark and her supporters for their bigotry. They interpret that to suggest that she is receiving the white girl pass. They see Caitlin is receiving preferential treatment. And not due to her abilities, but rather due to the hue of her skin. She's become the WNBA poster child for white privilege. It's been a lot of rubbish, to be honest. I don't think I've ever encountered racist remarks from the NEI and the Fever fan base throughout my 11-year career, but Sue, that was not going to happen to her. She really embraced the truth, demonstrating why this narrative is incorrect and has to be changed. That's not what's occurring here, she stated boldly, indirectly. Furthermore, recent Thomas actions are not merely improper. It is detrimental. This set of people's ability to further those racist agendas was made possible by what I've said, and that, in my opinion, is what truly started the whole thing. And since then, a large number of people, though not all of them, have been acting on the presumption that these narratives, especially the targeting story, are accurate. Sue is not denying the existence of racism in the WNBA. She's not visually impaired, however. She is drawing attention to the fact that Caitlyn claims are unfounded. She believes that Reese and Thomas are hiding their own problems under this racial myth. And they're dragging Caitlyn through the mud rather than owning up to their own shortcomings. Sue also didn't mince words. She spelled everything out. This isn't some groundbreaking expose on prejudice in sports. She claims it resembles an excuse. More warnings. Who was not amused by this? Can we please just call a spade what it is? Before this year, racism had an effect on the WNBA. This is not a novel concept in that sense. I definitely believe Caitlyn is being exploited as a pawn. Racism was not introduced to the WNBA by Caitlyn. This has been taking place. The fact that other people are taken aback by this, in my opinion, is what has shocked us all the most. Without a doubt, Caitlin Clark's ascension has been incredible. She is dominating the court. She didn't ask to be in the center of this racial storm, but now she's also trapped in it. Bird observed that Caitlin was receiving a great deal of attention. However, because she's a fantastic player, let's not act like that's just because she's white. According to Bird, the entire situation has been twisted into a complex story that has little to do with reality. Yes, Caitlyn is in the limelight. Pseudo was not going to allow recent Thomas to claim this is something it isn't. Yes, she is undoubtedly doing fantastically. Her performance speaks for itself. Really, I think my favorite aspect is women's sports in general, but women's basketball in particular has been becoming better. It has similarities to the impact that Magic and Bird had on men's basketball. We kind of needed anything right now. That time is now, yes, and that's Caitlyn moment. And I believe her logo threes have a big part in it. One of the biggest surprises, though, came when Sue revealed that she had spoken to Caitlin Clark personally. She now knows her better, and what do you know, the entire narrative of white privilege that Reese and Thomas are promoting. Yes, that isn't the complete narrative. Sue clarified that Caitlyn is not a wealthy player who is only taking advantage of her skin tone. Like everyone else, she's been putting into work and making her way up. Bird is aware that things are far more difficult than they appear to be. She doesn't hesitate to express it. I can sometimes understand why. It has been utilized. It's almost as if during an interview you could just say all the Fever fan base in response to questions. Yes, by that, what do you mean? His new fans have to give that up. It's not for the Fever fans, so it has to go. Not Caitlyn Sid admirers. That's a sizable collection of individuals. Let's continue talking about the Fever. For now, that's a sizable collection of individuals. So when it comes down to it, the faction inside that group that is promoting hate, racist agendas, and division on the internet is what we're talking about. This is where things get difficult. To said the entire race topic has been used to physically attack Caitlyn on the court. She looks to be targeted for this discriminatory accusation. The basketball topic is also changed. Caitlyn avoids more than verbal abuse. She's getting beat up and ducking elbows because it's too personal. Bird stated clearly there's more to this than competition. Gamers are using racism, jealousy, or other resentment toward Caitlyn to pursue her too far. According to Caitlin Clark, Kennedy Quarter gave her a cheap shot in a non-basketball player. You know, she's not shy. She stated that discussing racial bigotry has been politicized and is harmful.